When did the idea of the karate belt system come about, and how did all that work?
So, yeah, I think I made some notes here. I think it was in 2017. I think it was. I'm not absolutely sure, but I think it was 2017 that, again, we were trying to build engagement to the subreddit. And at the time, a lot of what was being put up there was what people were familiar with, things like master number 3 locks and, a lot of pictures of keys and stuff. It was more focused and it was better moderated, but it was still kind of the same thing over and over again. And so I started racking my brain trying to think, well, what can we do? What can we do to increase engagement? And the contests were working well, but I thought a game. I like to play games, like video games, and I thought, well, a game that rewards people for branching out and trying new things might be really fun. And obviously, I never imagined it would turn into this, but I imagined 10 or so people might enjoy playing it. So I cobbled it together. Just based on kind of my own experience, my own path through picking. And so, inevitably the system looks a lot like my own experience. And so I put it together that way. And the current mods at the time was Tumbl3r and Mr. Guy Fawkes and a kitty of Tumbl3r. We all talked a little bit about how to make it. We put up, I think there was fewer than 100 locks first implementation of it. But we put up locks and we collaborated on the classification of them. Again, they were a lot of the locks that I had been working with because that's what I knew, right? And so we put out the first version of it, and it's funny because a lot of people criticized it at first. They're like, "This is super lame. It's just internet points." I'm like, "Yeah, but it was never intended to be anything but internet points." It's cool that you got the point of it, right? And it's like, I don't need to show off, what I've done and stuff. And fair enough, right? Like it is just a game. And so about half the people seem to love it and about half the people seem to hate it. And it started picking up some momentum, and almost immediately we had to hire a whole bunch of new moderators to handle all the requests. Because, it's not a small thing to kind of review all the material and get through it. And of course, the little secret there is that there's a kind of there's very much a Pareto distribution of people who are actually handling the belt requests. At any given time, it's a handful of folks. So, that's really the heavy lifting of the system is something that can be moderated and administered, but also is fun enough. And so I think we got there. It is, I will say, hard to moderate and administer, but I'm pretty taken with the number of people who seem to enjoy it for sure.
How different is it now from when you started?
Not terribly, to be honest with you. It has gone. I racked my brain thinking about how to explain this part. It's been expanded and enhanced by so many different people that it's going to be impossible for me to give everybody who deserves credit.
Right.
But there have been some kind of major milestones, and I guess I'll talk about those. The first major milestone was the introduction of the challenge lock, the challenge lock requirement. That came from Kitty of Tumbl3r. He was very insistent that initially I did not want there to be a challenge lock requirement. He was very insistent that there should be because he enjoyed the way challenge locks help people make friends. And I can't argue with that. I mean, I resisted any kind of challenge lock requirements, not because I don't like challenge locks, but because they're kind of by necessity one of a kind. And I thought to myself, well, how do we can't grant somebody a belt based on a challenge lock that they pick because there's not two of them, right? It's only available to one person at a time. So I wasn't thinking enough about it, but he thought of the idea of creating a challenge lock requirement. That turned out to actually be in the beginning a deeply unpopular requirement. There was quite a few people who were resistant to it because they didn't like the idea of sending locks and their addresses out, which is an understandable thing, right? But again, this is a game, so if you want to play it, that's play it. If you don't, that's fine too. But we immediately, I don't know if you've read it, but if you look around the challenge lock requirements, there's a lot of very specific details on what you have to do. Because we were getting some people who would just make a file mark on one pin and call it a challenge lock. So, but hey, we're dealing with hackers here, right? So, hey, finding loopholes in the system is what we do. That's cool.
Yeah.
I can't fault them for that. So but it was funny. We did have to put a lot of structure around them. I think that was the first expansion to the system. Then after that, the black belt stuff was pretty strict and rigid. There was essentially one path through it because, well, it was the path that I wrote. So Pocket Racism came in and really modularized that. So instead of, for example, you have to do this and then this and then this, he said, okay, you can juggle around these requirements. You can pick some more locks for your requirement, or you can do another epic quest instead of picking. So he modularized the highest end of the system to make it more fun for people who didn't necessarily want to go through it the same way that I did, or it had been written. Then the third milestone, I think the major one was, or at least the fourth, was the Dawn system, which was written by Correct. And I don't know how familiar you are with that. It's published and people participate in it. It's after you get to a black belt, you can earn points by doing this or that. And I've been kind of racking my brain on how to specialize. Right now, there's very little guidance. It's just some things that you can do after black belt to kind of keep bumping up in the ranks. Right. So actually, CJ and I were talking about this the other day. It's like, well, maybe we can do like one of the challenges of this, and I think I told you before, is getting it to be a system that can be administered, right? Because it's so hard to keep all the requirements straight for, I think, almost 5,000 people are participating at this point. You can't the moderators just don't know, right? We're beyond it used to be you knew the people. You knew what they had done just kind of in your head because you were around. But there's so much now that I've been racking my brains on how to build more modules for it or expand it. And the only thing I can really come up with is something that can be administered by being essentially a specialty, and that has a specialist community in that. Like speed picking, for example, might be a specialization. And then maybe if you win contests, you earn points that way. Things like that. Those are the ideas that I'm thinking. The Dawn system is really an amazing kind of structure around which to add expansion. And so, yeah, I've been kind of thinking about that. I'm just thinking out loud, but that's what's been in my mind. But I think that pretty much covers it for the major milestones. So that's how it's different. I guess I'm finally answering your first question. How is it different from when I started?
I find it to be a really good incentive for people to keep progressing and developing their skill and expanding, their knowledge. Is that kind of what the goal of the game was, or was it really just more for fun? Or
no, absolutely. The goal was always to. So I set some boundaries out at the beginning. The first thing I felt very strongly about was that it was a non-zero-sum game, right? By winning a belt, you didn't take anything from anybody else. And in fact, at the higher levels, you have to give something to somebody else in order to get a belt. So it was always meant to be a system that encourages people to go on a path forward, push themselves out of their comfort zone, and help others, and then recognize the accomplishments once they're there. And that's one of the things I think people don't get immediately is they think it's a contest. They think and it is a ranking system, but it's not like a ranking system. It's a recognition of accomplishment. And I think, I guess we'll talk about that article, but that's what they got right. It's the social aspect. It's the I'm proud because I got the next level up. And it very much came from video games. It was like, give a little reward. Like, and yeah, they're silly, but it's something that people can share in. I was a skateboarder when I was a kid, and even though I would go to skateboarding competitions, everybody celebrated each other's accomplishments. If you got a new trick, everyone was super happy. And that's what I wanted this to be, was a way for all the community to be happy with the accomplishments of other people. So yeah, it was never meant to be anything other than something of a guided path into the unknown, and then also a way for people to kind of rally around each other when there's an accomplishment happen. That was always really important. And it was kind of surprising to me how seriously a lot of people took it at the beginning, because it was never meant to be kind of a contest. It was always definitely meant to be a non-zero sum game. Is I think the best way I can say it.
Adding the flair on the Reddit and the Discord really kind of helps people to have a little bit of bragging rights to show their accomplishments without actually having to say it all the time. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, that's part of the fun, right? It's your friends.
Right.
Your friends recognize that you did something cool. And that's a really powerful thing to people. I mean, it's not bragging rights really. It's that mutual celebration.
Right.
It's not, I did something you didn't. It's, oh my gosh, that person really leveled up fast, and that was awesome. They're really putting their back into it. And everybody, since we're all enthusiasts, people celebrate that.